Welcome to CreateGrowProfit Coaching Stories. I am Morris from CreateGrowProfit.com, and today I'm speaking to Joey Chandler. Joey is a celebration coach, and we're going to talk about how to get better at being you. Joey, thank you so much for being here today. Where are you calling in from?
I am calling in from Reno, Nevada, and thank you so much for having me.
For people listening in, just before we hit record, Joey and I discovered that we are in a very close location to each other, just time-wise differently. So if you've been watching my interviews, I'm in a different location right now. I'm in the mountains, and Joey was also here in the Swiss Alps in the mountains many years ago, and in a village that is very close to me. It was incredible to find that out.
Yeah, that was nice. I don't get to talk to too many people that know about Lenzerheide, so it's fun to just talk about that. I mean, it's such a beautiful place, such an awesome part of the world that it's fun to talk about.
Yeah, Joey told me that you were doing snowboarding in Lenzerheide, and Lenzerheide is a very famous ski resort here in Switzerland. So definitely one of the best places to spend an entire winter in if coming to Switzerland. Joey, you call yourself a celebration coach, and that is such a unique angle. Tell me a little bit about who do you work with?
Yeah, it is different. I work with mostly business owners, honestly, a lot of people, contractors and people in the trades, electricians, fire alarm installations, people who have business. They're oftentimes men. So I work with a lot of men, and they have a business, but they also and they see an opportunity. They see an opportunity for growth. They see something that they want to accomplish, but they're having a hard time getting out of the day to day, all the stuff that they have to do on a day to day basis to grow, to move forward. So what I do is I help them identify what I call their core process, which is their way of doing things, and then they apply that to their business. And I became a celebration coach because the very first thing that I do, and the thing that I help all of my people do, is to celebrate themselves first. If you can imagine, most businesses or most people, like when you go through things, or if you're working with somebody, you get to know them, you figure out their goals, you figure out their plans, you take actions, and then you celebrate. And what I found in working with clients in my own life is that we are far better at celebrating other people than ourselves. And by having celebration at the end, we just never got to it. Like we would do all this stuff, and by the time we did the celebration, we're like too exhausted, and then we just end up, starting over. And so we end up getting this repetition of being exhausted all the time, even though we're producing great results. And honestly, it started with my clients because they were saying, "Hey, I just celebrate other people better than me." So I said, "Hey, let's move celebration up to the top." And we started doing that. And they just saw immediate results. Because when you celebrate yourself and you build up that muscle to do that, you just get energized. You just get things. You just get moving forward. And then honestly, it was I was doing my taxes, and I I put off my taxes, put off my taxes, put off my taxes for as long as I possibly could. And I was sitting down to do them, and I and I realized I am not present to any celebration right now. I am just upset 'cause I'm gonna have to owe money that it didn't make enough. Just I was just angry about a bunch of things. And I said, "Well, it's worked for my clients, so let me try this. Let me move celebration up to the top." And I just thought about all the things I had accomplished in the past year, personally, professionally, just things. And I thought about all that. I took some deep breaths, I got grounded, and then I got my taxes done. And my taxes still sucked. I still owed money. I still, I still, all this stuff was exactly the same. But because I celebrated myself and I kept doing that throughout that process, I just got it done. And it just occurred to me like, wow, that's an amazing thing. So then I started doing some more work. I started journaling every day about like what I was celebrating, like, oh, this is great. And honestly, it was after a couple of days, it started to feel fake. I'm like, if I'm just celebrating, like that's not me. And so I said, okay, I celebrate what can I celebrate from yesterday? What what can where did I struggle too? Like I just started like here's my struggles. What are my goals? What are my plans? What are my actions? Then I go take action, and that gives me something to celebrate the next day. And that wheel, that celebration cycle, I just find moves you forward. It builds your confidence. It helps you develop systems that work for you. And so now my clients, what we're doing is we're helping them get clear on how they operate. They're taking action. We're celebrating them, and they're finding ways to create systems and procedures and ways of doing things that work for them. So rather than trying to learn new ways and get overwhelmed by the massive amount of really great information that's out there, but when you're stressed, if you can imagine you're running your own electrical business and you got a million different things going on, you're trying to grow. You're not going to take the time to work through all the things that you learned on a podcast or in a book or something. You're going to do it your way. So I say, let's get really good at doing it your way and just celebrate the heck out of it, and you'll find things that work for you.
Yeah, this sounds much deeper than just a gratefulness practice. And it also sounds like you empower your clients to operate from a position of strength as opposed to looking at all the things that are wrong and all the struggles that they're experiencing.
Yeah, I think it's a way of celebrate. It's a way, it's an awareness practice. It's a system. It's a variety of things. Just the way I'm wired. I need to have kind of this going. This baby steps. The other part that was a big component of this is that I burnt out a couple of years ago. It was in January of 2022. I woke up one day and I'm like, I'm just done. Like I was going through a divorce, living alone, post COVID, just a bunch of stuff. And I woke up one day and I said, I just got nothing left. I can't be anything but me. I just don't have the energy. And then a couple days later, I woke up and I said, okay, who am I and how can I be more of that? If I can only be me, then who am I and how can I be more of that? And I started exploring, and I had some ideas of core values at that point, but it turns out I just had too many. I heard a story from the Navy SEALs, the military group here in the US, and they put everything in sets of 3 because apparently when you're getting shot at, you can remember 3 things more than anything else. And and I just said, "Okay, well, it wasn't like this real wise transform moment. It's just like, that sounds easier. I'm gonna give it a try." And I reduced my core values down to courage, connection, and curiosity. And then I started waking up each day and I would say, okay, how can I bring some courage, some connection, some curiosity to my day? And I would take many, many, many baby steps. And those baby steps eventually became bigger steps. And within a few months, I had recovered from burnout without really doing any focus on yoga or meditation or journaling or drinking water or any of the stuff that you normally hear in anti-burnout work. A- and in and I wasn't against those things because I was against them. I just didn't have the energy. I was just too tired. I was too, I was burnt, because when you're burnt, and that's the thing, like, it's easy to talk about burnout, but until you really burn out, you don't know how just debilitating it is. So what I recognize is by having that system that I could wake up every day and, like, how can I bring courage, connection, curiosity to my day? And that gave me a little bit of foundation, allowed me to take a step forward. And I would take a couple steps forward and more steps back, and but after a while I got it. And then that led me, so I was like, wow, these having 3 core values is really powerful. So I started looking at that. And core values are talked about all the time in business. You have a lot of people who are starting their coaching practice. I'm sure they've been told, find your core values. But most people, their core values there's too many of them, and they're too complicated. It's because when you're exhausted and when you're burnt out and you're in those low moments when you really need your core values, if they're any more than 3 words, you're simply not going to remember them. Like, it's just the facts. You just aren't going to remember them, and you need them. Core values are really, really helpful when things suck. When you when you don't have the business, when you're really doubting yourself, when just whatever it is, and you can take a deep breath and say, okay, this is who I am. Fast forward a few months, I was really exploring core values, went really deep into them, but I started to see there was always a difference between who we are and how we operate. And if you imagine our core values describe who we are, I started to use this phrase called the core process, which describes how you operate. And there's usually like 5 steps that you go through, and there's some version of basically asking people, where are you successful, where are you struggle, what are your goals, what are your plans, what actions can we take? And everybody has their own language on that. And maybe they reorder those things, but they usually cover those steps. And I started using that, and I started moving forward. So then I could talk to, and I started talking to coaches and consultants and then contractors about how they do things. And it just dawned on me like, man, I don't have the energy to learn everything new. But if I get better at being me, there's just this satisfaction that you get when, like, wow, my system, my system works. And you're like, holy cow, my system worked. And then I started doing it with using this with clients. And now all of my coaching is simply really understanding their process, and then each call, we just walk through their process and we say, hey, whatever their process is, where are things working, where are they not? What do you see? And 99% of the time they're coaching themselves. They're like, oh, you know what? I didn't use my process here. Da, 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 da. Or, you know what? I'm struggling with my process here. Can you help me explore this? And we just explore it. Like, I don't know the answers, but we explore it, and it just deepens their own sense of who they are. So then they have their core values, they have a deeper sense of who they are, and then we just celebrate the heck out of them. And so they become more of themselves, which is that whole idea of like becoming more of you.
Oh, that is so in depth, Joey. That's like there's a bunch of things that I want to unpack with you. First of all, the fact that you turn it into a system, right? Like you're right. It feels so good to be more of ourselves. There is satisfaction to this, and also to build something that comes from ourselves. And I watched one of your TikTok videos, and you said there's too much information out there. You don't need more information. And I thought to myself, yeah, it's true. Like very rarely do I speak to someone and the problem is that they need more information. Like that's very rarely the case. It's usually something else. And I really think you're onto something by identifying their core values and their process. So my first question is, how difficult was it for you to identify your core values? Was that, and how long did it take?
Yeah, so previous backstory, I had done a bunch of work around values and purpose, probably for about 6 or 8 years before that. So I had had quite a bit of experience, and I had developed a system for helping people identify their core values, which, people can go to my website and they can get that. It's honestly not very complicated. One of the things I saw is that our core values are much more part of our life than we realize, and they have been with us for a long time. If you believe that we have something at our core, something like love or joy or happiness, some kind of overriding thing, then our core values represent how we make that thing happen. So for me, I say I am love at my core, and my core values are courage, connection, and curiosity. When I am bringing courage, connection, and curiosity to my business, to relationships, to my family, there's just more love. There's more. I feel more love myself. I think they feel more love. There's just more love. That's just what I do, and having those core values is how I can help make that all happen. Yeah. So that part isn't. But what was really transformative was reduce. I used to have 5 core values, and even 5 was not hard to remember. I could use it, but there was for me a tectonic shift when I went from 5 to 3, because the Navy SEALs are right. You just remember them better. And when you can remember them better, you can use them more in language. You can think about them. You can put them to use. And I think this is critical with core values, is that you put them to use, that you think about it. You go like, wow, I asked that girl out on a date and it really did not go well. Which one of my core values was missing? Like something was going on here that had me not be my best self. And you can start to just explore that. Or I want like for me, my clients experience courage, because it takes courage to say this is who I am and this is how I operate. They connect with themselves and they form deeper connections with their clients and their family and their loved ones, and they get curious about what it really takes to live true to themselves. A lot of my clients, some of the things that we do, there's a section, or kind of an experience that many of them go through, is where they start letting go of things. They let go of clients who no longer are serving them as well as they could be. They let go of relationships that aren't where they're not really happy. They let go of habits and practices that they put in place before, but you know what? They're like, this really isn't me. And and so it's this whole process. So that's when I operate my best. So we really want to get clear on those core values and keep it simple. Our core values have been with us for a long time. Like they ought to be simple. They don't have to be complicated.
Yeah. That and that's an interesting timing for this interview today, Joey, because just earlier today I posted a video with a little experiment where I have three pictures. On the first picture, there's 10 items lying on the table, and in the second picture, there's 5 items. On the last picture, there's 1 item. And I show each picture for just, a second or a second and a half to demonstrate how difficult it is to absorb that information. And I wanted to illustrate that if you are focusing on too many client avatars or too many ideas, then even if the opportunity presents itself, you're not going to see it because you're distracted by 9, 7, 8 other options. But if you focus on one thing, then even if you see it for a fraction of a second, you'll be like, that's it. And I feel like the way you're explaining core values is a similar experience.
Yeah, and it's not to say that a person doesn't have more values than all of those things, but to really make use of them, to really dive deep into them, to get the full essence out of that. I think 3 is just by far the best because it's just easier to remember.
And it's based on research and experimentation done by the Navy SEALs. I mean, that says a lot too.
Yeah, yeah, there's that too. And, uh, and you could try it with yourself. Like, try to have a conversation where you say 5 core values and have a conversation when you say 3. You will see that it's far easier to do the da da da, this, and this, rather than this, and this. Like, just those extra beats take time, and given how tired and exhausted and frustrated and overwhelmed and all the stuff that we are, anything that requires more energy is probably gonna get let go at some point.
And you also mentioned focusing on their process. That's something I really like because it's good to have values and ideas and missions, but then we still need to live day to day. We need to take action, implement things, create results. So how do you go about helping people refine their process?
It's a This is the first thing to know, it's a repetitive process. Like a person's process, the first time we do it is never it never lasts 100%. So it's always something that you're refining and moving forward. But in general, the way that we do it is it's very simple. Like I just ask the question, when you first start working with somebody, what's the first thing you do? And then after that, what's the next thing you do? And then after that, what's the next thing? And by that time, we're usually you have some sort of plan. You're like, I mean, again, usually it's like I connect with the person. I want to know what their goals are. We come up with a plan. We take action, and then we revise and celebrate. That's generally. I mean, is that about what you do when you work with your people?
Yeah, pretty much on a high level. Yeah.
Yeah, on a high level. Yeah, there's details and there's ways that you do it 100%. But in general, that's kind of how people do it. And so I just ask people then, and people have their own language for that. And I really like to empower their own language because it lands true to them as opposed to just something they learn. And so we do that. And then the one thing, my little twist, which makes me the celebration coach, is I move celebration up to the front. That's the one thing I insist that we do. We use all of the language, but we put celebration on top. And so, um, and so now, like I have a coach who helps men post divorce, and his thing is like I want to help men create stories that they're really proud of, and so we celebrate with him. We always celebrate first. We say, okay, what's the story you're telling yourself, and what's the story you want to tell yourself? That's his process. Then what are the goals? What are the plan? Like what are some actions he can take? And I just use that with him, and he's moving forward. He's growing his business. He's being a better dad. There's all sorts of things because he's being himself. And then the other thing that, so once we identify that, the real thing that has really changed, just makes it amazing, is that I put in a journal practice, and Not so much a journaling, it's almost like a day planning practice, but it's part journal, part day planning. And basically you go through your process. Because, and the reason we do this is because if you could imagine your core process is essentially you operating at your best. You can imagine that if I asked you, like, how do you do all these things? And you gave me a description, you're going to be telling me the description of when you are your best self, when you are the best prepared, when you're just, when you have it all together, you're like, this is how I help people because I know it works. So when you journal that your process in the morning, you're setting yourself up to operate at your best. Now, life happens and there's all sorts of different things. But what I find is like for me, when I go through it, I journal I journal myself, what can I celebrate about the day before? I say, hey, where did I struggle? What are my goals? What are my plans? What are my actions? Doing that gets me grounded because I wake up like, life sucks or whatever it is, whatever bad stuff. It gets me grounded. It helps me understand the power of my process. Like it just makes it more part of my day-to-day life. And it gives me actions I can take, which in this, when I take those actions, gives me something to celebrate the next day.
Yeah, that's something that I look for in all like coaching methodologies and strategies. Does it work on the bad days, and does it acknowledge that sometimes life sucks? Because we, as awesome as it sounds to be like super focused and positive, and that's just not that's just not reality. Like, and yeah, how well does it work on the bad days? And I like that you have that built into the system, like acknowledging it, so it doesn't become something that we suppress or avoid or even fear. It's something that we're ready to deal with, right?
Yeah, and the really great part is um look, on days that things suck, because they do, some aspect of your process is missing or could be elevated. There's something going on that has that day suck. If you can imagine you were operating at your best, your day wouldn't suck, um, and by going through your process, you can start to see like, oh, I like for me, it's like I'm missing part of my plan, or I didn't ask for what I really wanted, or I didn't take the action that I saw to take. I can see where it is. So not only does your process make for really good day planning sort of activity, but it also makes for a very good review, review and being able to revise and really explore like, hey, wow, that really worked, or wow, that really didn't work. And it's really helpful that way.
Yeah, just collecting feedback essentially on your own process. So, Joey, when you started coaching, how did you get your first batch of clients? What did you do to market yourself as a coach?
It was a lot of, I'll be honest, it was a lot of just talking to friends. Um, but the thing that's working now, I would say the most is that people get the sense that I am using my process on myself. I am doing my work. There's so many people that are out there saying, "Hey, there's this amazing thing we can do," and da 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 da. And then you ask them, "Well, like, are you using your process?" And they're like, "Well, no, it doesn't apply to me, or it doesn't apply to my situation, or I borrowed this from someone else's thing." And there's so much skepticism that like if you can't own your process, if you can't say, hey, this is how I do things and these are the results I produce, and I may not have done it for a lot of other people, but let me tell you about how I use my process, in my dating, in my fitness, in my whatever. I can do it. The more stories you have, the better off it is. So the way I did it is you start to do as many free or low cost things as you can, and you build up your system, you build up your process, you build up your ability to produce results. So you can look someone in the eye and say, if you sign up with me and you pay your whatever it is, whatever the amount is, I well, I start to guarantee results now. I say, look, I don't know when it will happen, but if you use your process over and over again, you will produce the result you want. It may not happen as fast as you want, but it's probably going to happen faster than you think. And so we just go to work on that. Um, but I think the big thing too is you got to apply your process to yourself. Like if you aren't clear, like your process is like the shit. I'm sorry if I'm using the language. Like if you aren't clear, your process is like really, really good, either do the work to make it great or or not, because there's too many coaches who have really good things, and if you can't say here's how I produce results for for you, this type of person, it's really going to be really hard. It's just going to be exhausting because you're going to be trying to prove yourself to somebody, and more importantly, you're going to be trying to prove yourself to yourself, and that is no fun. I've done that for years, and that is no fun.
Yeah, the fake it till you make it approach is very draining.
It's very draining. But and here's the cool part. This is why everybody should come figure out their core process and celebrate, because your core process, the way you do things, is already in your life. We don't create anything new with your core process. All we do is bring some clarity and some refinement and some intentionality to it. So when you get clear in your core process, you can very quickly go back and say, you know what? I didn't know this exactly, but here's what I did in this situation. And it lines up exactly with my core process and it produced X result.
Yeah, like taking the flashlight and illuminating things that we're already doing successfully, and then even being able to communicate that to others.
Yeah. And it gives you a boost to yourself. You're like, oh, yeah, I didn't know it then, but I mean, I can look back in my life and I have many, many stories where I'm like, I didn't know exactly what I was doing, but I celebrated people. I looked at our struggles. I looked at, I did it over and over again. And I can use those stories to build confidence for myself, even if I wasn't using that process exactly.
Yeah. So if you went back in time, right, like giving yourself tips on how to get started with your marketing, is that the number one thing you would tell yourself? Like refine the process on yourself and share your results on how you apply the process to yourself?
I think that's one. Just be comfortable with your process. And the other thing I think is there, and this is sort of a motto that's being in mind, is like you got to find people that are weird like you. Like I talk about core values of the core process and all this to the point where like my family is like, stop, like stop talking about it. And I have been talking about core values and the idea that we have something at our core for 10 years. And like and trying to convince people to see the world the way you do is exhausting and impossible. And I mean, maybe not impossible, but really, really hard. And so figure out your way. Think about what makes you weird. Like me, for me, my weird, my like, I have electrical contractor who this week is on a 5-day meditation retreat with his wife. Is going to end up dancing under the full moon with 150 other women. Like it's, I attract weird people. And like, there's no other electrical contractor I know that does that. But I attract the people that are weird, that don't feel like they fit into their industry, because that's how I felt for so long. So one of the things is get clear on who you are, celebrate your weird, and find people who are weird like you. It just makes life so much easier.
I love that. What a great closing story, Joy. Like be more of you and share the stories of you no matter how weird, because yeah, others are going to be attracted to that.
Yeah, the weird stuff is the thing that makes you interesting. If you're like, "Hi, I'm a productivity coach," or I'm a confidence coach," or "I'm a whatever coach," there are literally 1,000,000,000 other coaches doing the exact same thing. But if you're like, "Look, like for me, I'm who I do. I help business owners who feel like they're the weirdos, the wackos, and the people that don't fit in. Like those are my people. And if because I help them figure out who they are and then turn that weirdness into a superpower, because it's what makes them different and what makes them interesting and what makes them, and ultimately allows them to relax, allows them to be themselves. Because if you can be yourself and celebrate what makes you weird with somebody else, you're just going to be more successful. You're going to move forward. You're going to have more fun and all that stuff.
And even you sharing that just now, it makes me feel more connected to you. Like, right? As a Yeah, it's true. It really works.
Well, yeah, I got to ask you, what's something that makes you weird? What can we share here that's like, you're like, I feel weird here, that maybe somebody could connect with for you?
Okay, what would be my weird thing? I guess it's I really like fantasy stories, like elves and dwarves and all that stuff. I love that. I love stories like that, whether it's from TV shows, books. Like right now, I'm listening to the Mistborn audiobook series. Yeah, that stuff just gets me excited.
Like, just imagine, like, how many people, like, you could create a whole coaching system around fantasy books. And like, I actually met a branding expert, and she said, the problem with people these days is that they don't have enough imagination. Like, instead of reading a self-help book, you should go read a book about a dragon, because when you read a book about a dragon, you create a whole new world for yourself, and you make things happen, and you see ways of doing things that maybe you hadn't seen before, instead of like the kind of the traditional, let's solve the problem. And so, like, that would be beautiful. You could just own the heck out of all, because there are so many people who love fantasy books, and you could connect with that. Like, that would just be an awesome, that could be a whole client base right there.
And you're right. One of the reasons why I enjoy these stories so much is because there are exaggerated situations that never happen in real life, but because they're exaggerated, they're like analogies for things that happen in our lives, right? Like, and you start to find your own little nuggets of wisdom in those books, right? It's all interpretation, of course, but that's something I appreciate about those stories. So, Joy, you mentioned earlier that you have a free guide on your website where people can get started identifying their core values. Where can they find that?
Yeah, it's at joeychandler.net. Yeah, there'll be it'll be on the just on the webpage there. I flip through different things. Sometimes I have my core values. Sometimes I have information about a core process. Sometimes I give the questions for celebration. I always have something there, and it kind of rotates.
And if people want to get in touch with you after listening to you, where do they go?
Yeah, joeychandler.net is the main thing, and I'm at joeychandler70 across all social media. But joeychandler.net is the main part. I have all blog posts and whatnot. And just the main thing is that if somebody has an idea, a vision, you're like, man, I have this thing that I want to get out in the world, but I feel too weird to do it or anything like that. Please get in touch with me, because we can go through. I always do the first coaching session is always free. And at the end, you'll be more clear on, who you are and what you're about. And you'll have the confidence to share that weird thing and just to make it happen, because the world needs your message, whatever that is.
I love that, Joy. Such a good ending. Thank you very much for this interview. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.